Narcissistic abuse is a category of behaviors that have a particular impact on people. You know, what these behaviors really entail is the leveraging of your already existent triggers. You see, you have a profound fear of being not good enough, a profound fear of not mattering, a profound fear of abandonment. And the irony is that these behaviors, although abusive in nature, compel reactions, internal reactions that are defining of yourself. And as you try to escape feelings of being not enough or feelings that could lead to abandonment, you attach yourself. These attachments are fight or flight based reactions that force you to attempt to overcome the experience, which would mean acquiring validation to experience being good enough, to assert safety within the relationship or mattering or making a difference. And so it's really important to understand that a lot of the commonly held beliefs about these relationship dynamics obviously hold narcissists accountable. And many people can relate to the experience of going through these relationships where you really experience a profound connection, love, and affinity for a person. And then you enter into that devaluation that can take months or even years in many cases, and then end up discarded, smeared with profound life consequences like the destruction of businesses or your finances, and even more importantly, your social existence, because narcissists will smear you. Oftentimes, they will plan these extraordinary, terrifying, and horrible experiences in advance. Some narcissists with high levels of sadism will actually knowingly engage in relationships to beguile people who they envy, who they may try to emulate initially, and expect reciprocation in terms of the respect. Unable to become you or like you, they will blame you for their own experiential shortcomings. Often lacking the same level of imagination and creativity, their efforts to emulate people that they envy will never work. And so sabotage, betrayal becomes the primary mechanism through which they experience being smarter than people. And so in a very cowardly way, they beguile people purposefully. And so envy, as it pertains to this disorder, is a particularly deadly and damaging thing. And there's many people that ended up not being alive as a result of these experiences, because you can be really feeling very lost, very confused, because there's cognitive implications that fear and the fear of abandonment, smallness, the experience of being stuck, paralyzed. There's profound cognitive implications to the experience of confusion, where it's very difficult for you to see yourself through situations or having a limited ability to understand what is actually taking place around you. And so these cognitive effects are due to fear itself. And so that's why they will act out very aggressively, try to trigger people into confusion, trigger you into guilt, trigger you as a way of disabling your ability to actually understand what's really happening around you. And that leads to these profound experiences of betrayal, where you have to reconcile what happened, because the behaviors of these people will be so unusual that sometimes it's very difficult for people that have not experienced narcissistic abuse to even relate to the reality of what you went through. When you go through periods of devaluation and idealization, you know, you'll have these highs and lows, and when you're feeling good and reconciled, often you'll be, you know, reaffirming the relationship to people that you might have told about problems. And so they'll look at you and you'll be, in a way, idealizing that person. And so it even makes it more difficult, you know. And so The challenge is also that narcissists exhibit symptoms for many different types of disorders, and it's very unusual for somebody to actually be diagnosed. You see, people typically think that these individuals are avoidant of mental health professionals, and that's not actually true. That many diagnoses, many people that are diagnosed as bipolar or borderline or having an anxiety disorder or OCD are actually, in fact, narcissists. Because if they go to seek treatment, they're seeking it for very specific sets of emotional experiences. And typically, people that study psychology are no better at discerning narcissists, because it's not a knowledge or lack thereof that has anything to do with these dynamics, because the behaviors of narcissists have profound transformative influence on the experience that you might have of them. That makes them very difficult even for seasoned professionals to identify. Not really understanding the origins or the unique architecture of the experience from the first-person perspective of a narcissist is something that has led to very erroneous conclusions about the formation. And we haven't connected things like supply with the emotional network of young children. And so not understanding the formation of narcissistic injury or the need for supply simply by looking at the neurological realities of young children, we've even miscategorized many different disorders, like borderline being put as a cluster B, when the formation of borderline and the expression of splitting has a completely unique presentation. So we have to keep in mind that the field of psychology is a subjective and philosophical one because it's absent science. It doesn't include physiology, doesn't include brain anatomy, doesn't include anything pertaining to the physiology of the central nervous system, doesn't really look at animal psychology, evolutionary biology, or even envelop Eastern traditions that demonstrate the illusory nature of subjective human experience with an aim to restore present moment consciousness. That the subconscious mind, as defined in psychology, is a product of the fight or flight system in animals being stuck within these paradoxical experiences where the emotional experiences of being not enough stimulate themselves. And so that's the problem with rumination. And that's the problem with being stuck, paralyzed, and confused, is that these experiences perpetuate themselves. It becomes a very difficult cycle to break. And the cycle actually has nothing to do with narcissists other than narcissists using and triggering those experiences, disabling you, causing you to get stuck. And so many people ruminate for extended periods of time trying to understand what happened, when understanding is the most irrelevant thing that you could do. It's your understanding that led you to stay in the relationship, that trying to figure it out, trying to understand is something that you do due to the cognitive dissonance, due to the dissociations associated with fear and confusion. That getting outside of confusion, getting outside of rumination, getting outside of trying to figure it out, if it was you, it was them, am I good enough? Is it something that I did? Even knowing that it was a narcissist isn't enough. Even understanding every facet of the disorder, people continue to ruminate. People continue to do nothing more than transfer these terms from psychology to overlap the same experiential dynamics that they're stuck within. Instead of saying my ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, you say narcissist. Instead of saying I still have feelings, you say I have a trauma bond. Instead of saying I'm confused, you claim cognitive dissonance. And then when you see people coming in and saying, well, tell me about the new supply. Are they going to get treated better than me? Well, if you're saying new supply, you already know more than enough. It wasn't the lack of knowledge that was the problem, that these behaviors are pathological, whether you diagnose the person or understand all the facets of the disorder, doesn't matter. If you could not observe these behaviors as anomalous in the moment, Putting a label to them isn't going to help. And so this crusade for understanding is the perpetuation of rumination, and it keeps people stuck. You see, it's one of the reasons why I started to get into coaching as opposed to just continually making narc content. The content became useless, that there's just a consumer culture around rumination, where I would make a lot more money if I just did live streams talking about the new supply, empaths versus narcissists, and the typical tropes and misinformation that has come to define the entire world of NPD, where people make a lot of money coaching people to try to help them overcome a trauma bond without even understanding the origins of the trauma bond and the fact that you can escape any of these reactionary dynamics, even if you were in the relationship, even if you just got discarded yesterday, that the suffering, while it's triggered by these people, has nothing to do with them at all. That you could repeat these dynamics, and it could be any narcissist in your life that will do this. And so if you're in a pattern of constantly having these relationships that makes you resigned, makes you cynical, makes you afraid of relationships, your fear, your lack of ability to trust or needing to trust is going to perpetuate this problem. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you don't have present moment awareness and discernment, then you're going to be vulnerable. And so it's really important that you discover the truth. The truth that sets you free is that there is nothing broken. That trauma, as explained by psychology, is not the actual cause of your adult experiences. And feelings of abandonment, fears of failure, and rejection are all abnormal. That whether you're a narcissist, a people pleaser, whatever it is, it's all pathology, and we're all in this together. That narcissists have been demonized, and rightfully so, but they are not responsible for your life, nor are they responsible for your attachments, nor are they responsible for your inability to really see and understand yourself. That if you're reacting to somebody else's behavior with an internal monologue or feelings of deficiency or failure, or if you fear abandonment and rejection at all or failure, those are things that can be easily overcome instantly. And it may not sound right to think that there isn't some lockbox of trauma that you've got to overcome, or that healing is some kind of lifelong journey, because that's what we've been led to believe. But it's not true. And if you want to look at all the psychology that we understand, but take a careful look at the world we live within. How is all the knowledge of psychology helping us with school shootings or our political situations or war, or our ability to navigate towards a more peaceful future, or the authentic approaches that it's going to require to address the challenges of our ecological imbalances, or these economic systems of indoctrinating people into mass consumption? People going around thinking that learning is memorizing terms have no capacity to learn at all. And that's the product of our education system, totally disabling people and surrendering all of our power to governments, corporate interests, and media outlets that are using the 13th Amendment to indoctrinate everyone to be mindless, thumb-sucking, victim consumers. And so if you stay within the victim movement, you are going to make no meaningful progress in your life. And that is a big problem. So you've got to get out of that. You've got to find your freedom. You've got to find your peace of mind. And you got to find it now, in this moment.